A lot of us shared in Seoul, we thought about the idea and we wanted to propose creating a community of practice using some open source tools like GitHub so that we wouldn't have to wait a year to talk about some of the lessons that we're learning, some of the processes that we're defining, some of the challenges that we're running into. So I definitely don't want to read this entire document. So I'm going to highlight the main sections and kind of discuss what we have proposed, knowing that once, if this work group and this community practice is established, the more detailed definitions, a lot of this will be defined by the stakeholder group that is identified and volunteers to participate. But to give some background and some summary about what we're hoping to do, our idea is to create a GitHub-based community of practice for people within each of our countries who want to participate and learn from each other on problems that they're trying to solve, data that they're hoping to collect, AI and ML models that they're using, use cases that they're discovered or interested in, and at best be able to participate together on solving those problems in an environment that's safe, both with publicly available data or simulated or just non-sensitive data, and with code or with documents that are publicly available, that are non-sensitive to share. So our vision is to establish a community of practice within GitHub where all of our teams and all of our contributors would have a space to share their code, share their documentation, share their governance best practices, share their data sets, their synthetic or public data sets, and be able to work on them as a shared community on these challenges. So some of our objectives are the creation of a shared repository. We have recommended using GitHub, both because it is a very, very common way to do this type of community building and resource sharing. And then to facilitate the collaboration on AI and ML models, best practices around those things, and kind of tackle some of these problems together, or at least tackle them in a way where other people can see the work that we're doing and maybe learn from it. Outside the technical stuff, I think one of our goals is to develop and disseminate best practices. Michelle hinted at the idea, or kind of talked about the idea that we all share a lot of legal framework and regulatory framework challenges when trying to do some of this that are very different country to country, but at a larger level, there's some of the same challenges that we all face. And like Michelle said, building capacity, some of the challenges we have about, how we grow a community. I think this is one of the ideas that we had about letting people be exposed to some of like a community of practice like this, to learn more about AI, learn more about ML, learn more about data management in a way that is, not sensitive. It's very open. So our proposal is to create a steering committee with representation from each country where that will govern this body. It's very important that I think that we don't have like a single organization or a single country or a single group doing it. So it just kind of govern through the consensus of the steering committee, and then define what working groups or what subjects within that steering committee, within this kind of community of practice, would be most relevant to the work that we're doing. So the working groups that we have on this are just proposed working groups. I think the steering committee, once mature and developed, would define what these are. But some of the examples that we thought may be helpful would be best practices with data stewardship and data ethics, the development of technical infrastructure for these capabilities for countries or teams that are interested in that, modeling and analytics. Like I know there was a lot of interest in that, including AI and ML. Capacity building for how each of us are kind of trying to build capacity with both our human resources and maybe some of the recruitment kind of areas that we have. And then communication and outreach, how we can maybe grow this community to let other individuals who are interested in learning more about these technologies or these practices could kind of come into the community, again, as a way to grow our capabilities in each of our countries. So for membership, we definitely wanted to be open to everyone here, everyone in each of the countries. We do want a stakeholder represented from each country if possible. So we are hoping to get some volunteers from each country to be a stakeholder of the steering committee. So kind of a voting member for policies and procedures and kind of the structural parts of the community, and help us guide, where it goes the first year, where it goes year over year. Make sure that we're addressing the needs of everyone. And some technical notes on what we were thinking for the shared environment with GitHub. And again, a lot of this is up for conversation with the stakeholders and a better definition once we have more time to work together on it. But the original concept was a workspace within GitHub for each country or each organization to publish their synthetic data sets, to publish the models, to publish their documentation about what they're interested in learning about or what they're working on in country that's shareable with everyone else. A centralized data repository where synthetic data that all of us could use for different things and apply different models to, so that we could see what outcomes that we come up with, again, using different models or different best practices. Metadata and data dictionary. I think a good thing that I've learned professionally over the years is having a place to play around with how we would structure metadata or data dictionaries on synthetic data is a really helpful way to inform how we may do it in our own country. So like, in our real world or with real data, and having a safe space to do it where there's no, risk or harm to play around with different metadata and data dictionary best practices has been very helpful for me. I think there's a lot there to learn, in a low risk environment. Learning how to license data sets appropriately based upon, data sharing agreements, data use agreements, things like that. Again, in a safe environment against synthetic or public data. I think one of the overarching kind of ideas that we wanted to ensure was that this was a safe place to play around with ideas and to learn without the risk of exposing data that shouldn't be exposed or having an impact with a model that may produce results that are invalid. Like a true learning kind of repository. Like I mentioned, having a model repository. So if someone's piloting a new model of a new, let's say a new AI model that's been released, being able to pilot that against our synthetic data sets, see what the results come back, being able to do model to model comparisons against like similar problems, I think would be really compelling. There's not a lot of examples of this in public health that I've been able to find, especially since our meeting, outside of our conversations. So I think being able to see everyone's work in this space would be incredibly informative for me. I imagine and hope it would be for everyone else as well. And then just the ability to create, wikis and documents of what we're learning, what we've been able to develop, things that didn't go well. I think those are very informative to be able to take back to our Ministry of Health offices or CDCs and be able to feel more comfortable with the lessons we learn, again, in a safe environment. And again, I won't dive too far into this, but I do think that it's an opportunity to help with our capacity building problem that was mentioned in Seoul, giving a safe space for people who want to learn more about these technologies without, having them handle real surveillance or real epi information, being able to create models that, are benign if they don't go well, but to be able to learn, again, in a safe space and learn from other people who are doing this and have junior people paired with more senior people as we explore some of these kind of capabilities and models together. And we had some ideas about being able to recognize people within the community, providing, recognition for like very cool things that people have done. I hope you all appreciate that we still talk about a lot of the demos that people presented in Seoul at the US CDC all the time. They were amazing. I still think about them a lot. And I think there's opportunities within a community of practice like this to recognize innovation, thinking about public health in a way that's, not traditional, but effective, things like that. And then I think again, a very loose roadmap based upon kind of when we were able to meet. But I think for the first 6 months, I think our primary objectives would be getting an understanding of who would be willing from each country to volunteer to be a stakeholder within a community of practice like this, knowing that there is some level of commitment to help determine the roadmap for the community, be able to set up, the steering committees and which kind of subgroups that were formed based upon the interest of each country. Developing policy frameworks around, when we say synthetic data that can go here, what does that mean? When we say public data, what does that mean? Charters about what data sharing means for, this committee and the stakeholders, the participants within it. And then setting up the GitHub infrastructure. So creating a place where people can, share their models, share their data, share their documentation, knowing that it's well governed, it's safe, and can be consumed by people from other parts of the community of practice. After the formation of that, I think that's where we would get into the operationalization of those subgroups. So each group of interest would be able to have kind of their sub roadmap. So if you were interested in data governance, there would be a roadmap developed for it. If you're interested in AI and modeling, there would be a roadmap for it for the next year. And at that point, our hope would be to really see those subgroups take off and start piloting different use cases, start understanding what's valuable within that subgroup to tackle its problems, and then just working together in a place where allows us to communicate on a day-by-day or a week-by-week basis, work on common problems, projects, things like that. And then long-term, I think, very aspirational, but growing this community of practice so that we're able to bring more people in, countries or organizations or individuals who are willing or interested in learning about these things, being able to have them come in, play around with this open source kind of information that we've been able to build as a foundation. Again, knowing that there's just not a lot of places out there that are looking at these technologies, looking at these methodologies specific to public health. And I think after, a year, 18 months, 2 years, my hope would be we would have a really good library for someone who was interested in learning more about this to start and kind of grow as a capacity building exercise as well. So again, I appreciate everyone's time. It's very good to see everybody. I'm going to turn it back over to Michelle. I do think the most important part of this is getting your feedback, your questions, and hopefully we can spend the rest of the meeting kind of talking through those things.
Great. Thank you so much, Josh. And let me just ask Sue, is there anything you want to add before we jump to kind of questions and comments, discussion?
Not much, but I just want to give the credit to Josh. I mean, he, developed this, incredible proposal. I think just adding to what he said, I walked away from the meeting and saw with so much enthusiasm. I learned so much from all of you, and really appreciated, Michelle's and Todd wanting to, continue the momentum of our discussions and our shared learning. Moving forward. So I think, since we've come back, our department has released an AI strategy. I'm interested to learn about all of you all's AI strategies, and as CDC thinks about or advances towards, releasing our AI strategy. We're also thinking about data use agreements. So there's just so much more that we can learn from each other as we go along. So just appreciate all of you for this dialogue, and Michelle and Todd for this opportunity and platform to continue our shared learnings.
Great. Well, thank you. So as I said, video calls are notoriously difficult to have conversations openly, but we're going to do our best. So I really would like to just throw it open for comments, questions, anything that you'd like to contribute. Again, I think it's, we really, as Josh said, this is just a proposal, nothing set in stone. The intent is really that this be relevant and helpful to this community, it's not just a US CDC effort. It really needs to be sort of owned by everyone who's participating. So yeah. And then if you can just please introduce yourself if you want to come in on anything.
Hello, hi. This is Justin here, and this is Alvin here from CDA Singapore. We couldn't find a raise hand function, so we're just going to come in if that's okay. And thanks to the US CDC for driving this. We weren't at the original meeting in Korea, but our colleagues have passed this on to us as this is part of our portfolio here in CDA. And so we had a few questions about the project. And thanks for driving this. We think that this does look fairly interesting, but we had a number of questions about one, actually who this was open to, this potential community of practice. Is it open to sort of like all countries? Are we thinking of a select group of member states or individuals, or who? Are we talking about organizations or individuals? Second, we wanted to find out what the USP for this potential community of practice was. We know that there are a number already existing, like Epiverse or in Recon. So what is the actual fundamental difference conceptually between this and, say, a community of practice like Epiverse? And I wondered if you could flesh that out a little bit for us as we consider our participation. Thanks again for this call, and thanks for the explanation and the papers shared so far.
Great. Yeah. Thanks. Two very good questions. I'll take the first one and then I'll turn the other one to Josh. In terms of participation, so we really wanted to start with all the countries and national public health institutes that have been part of the original meeting in Seoul, and would like to really, if there is interest, have some representative be part of the steering committee. I think we would then task that steering committee with deciding what other organizations, countries, institutes to open this community of practice to. So yes, that could include academic universities, it could include multilateral organizations, it could include sort of other countries if there was interest, but we would really sort of, I think, hope that the steering committee, with the representatives designated on that, sort of take those decisions in terms of who to engage and include. Josh, please add to that if you'd like, and or if you can also take the second question, which I do not know the answer to.
Yeah, I 100% correct on Michelle's part. And I will also say, Sue, maybe you do. I'm not familiar with the other community of practices that you mentioned. Would love to learn more about it to see if there is an overlap there. I think a lot of this came from an agreement within Seoul that this was a thing that seemed to be lacking. There was a lot of conversations about the quote that I think about a lot is that let's not wait another year. It felt like a lot of these conversations are happening at conferences or once a year. And I think we left thinking, as quickly as these things move, how could we keep these conversations moving forward? How could we learn, again, week to week, day to day? And a lot of the modeling or a lot of the proposal that we've put together reflects what open source communities do with these types of problems. And a lot of the fundamental practices that are defined here are just what open source communities have done and done very well. So I think we were just hoping to bring those open source community practices to something like this, where each of our countries could work together almost in an open source community kind of way. So apologies for not knowing the answer to those things. If you are willing to send those over, though, I'd love to see more about those organizations to see if there is overlap or, maybe some opportunities there to work with them on this problem as well.
Thanks, Josh, and guys for the answer. Just we can touch base offline on some of those other kind of community of practices. I have one final question, and then I'll hand over. But I suppose that as the proponent, do you foresee any sort of potential resource/financial requirements on the part of participants or steering committee members for this? I.e., is this going to be funded? And do we have any kind of resourcing available for this project, or do you expect member states to be in a position to contribute financially for this?
Great question as well. I'll try to tackle that one. So at this point, and again, thanks to sort of ION fee and some of our CDC funding, what we anticipate is that we have financial resources to convene an annual in-person meeting. So we would hope to do that in 2026, sort of later this year. And that would probably, hopefully be sort of the first kind of in-person meeting of the steering committee, with all the sort of stakeholders there present in person, as well as kind of other sort of work group interests in it. I think, initially the participation will be driven by each country or institute's priorities and national interests. So I know, again, we talked about forecasting analytics, workforce development. A lot of countries are investing in those already. And so this would really be a technical community of practice through the GitHub platform to share those best practices and shared learning. I think one thing, going forward, I think there's a lot of opportunities for additional funding, but that's not something that we've sort of addressed or crossed at this point. And I think, again, that's something that the steering committee could consider in terms of additional partnerships and stakeholders. I hope that answers the question.
One thing to add to, I think with this proposal, we made an effort to make sure there was no financial commitment required to participate in the GitHub repository, being a stakeholder. I think the only thing that we're asking is for time, if you're interested in, your contributions, your participation in where the work, where the community of practice goes. But GitHub, none of the resources that we've mapped out have a financial requirement or commitment. That was by design. We want to make sure everyone's available who is willing and has the time to participate.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Really important point. No requirements per se. It's time and effort based on your interests.
And I think, Michelle, if I may add, I think what we found at Seoul was that, each one of us was on a data modernization journey. And Josh and I reflected that, if we took out, our organization logos, we had these really, really similar journeys, similar navigation through challenges and opportunities. And so the forum itself, gave us the opportunity to reflect on our experiences and see how we can navigate forward, more strategically, more effectively, building upon each one of our, what we've learned to date. So it was just very unique to be a part of an international community of folks that had all been putting their heart and soul into data modernization. So over to you.
Lucy?
Hi, morning. I'm Isani from Malaysia. I hope you can hear me. By the way, thank you for the presentations of this innovative proposal, and we appreciate its strong focus on cross-border collaborations like open science and also with the capacity buildings. Just to better understand how this initiative would operate in practice. So I just want to ask some clarifications that how this community of practice expected to be governed in practice. In particular, how will strategic direction in terms of their oversight and also decision making be organized across different regions and institutions? I think that's all for my questions now.
Yeah, that's a great question. And again, open for us to decide. I think our original proposal is the convening of a stakeholder group, ideally with a representative from each country, who then determines the direction of the community of practice. So I don't think that we're looking to encourage a central model for decision making. I think that we're hoping to see who's interested in participating and letting the people who are interested and passionate about it be the ones who determine policies, where the community of practice goes, kind of the roadmap for the community. It's one of the reasons that we're like outside of ensuring that, the data that we're talking about is public and synthetic. We're really hoping for the community that forms to be self-governing and to kind of drive itself towards where it believes the most valuable problems to solve are.
If I can just add, Dr. Isani, that's a great question. I think, again, anything's possible in terms of structure, but one possibility is that, the steering committee for any countries that are interested in participating in this community of practice would have a focal point, right? That would be the representative for, whatever country was participating. But then within that steering committee, they would identify again what those priority subgroups were, whether that's forecasting and analytics or AI or governance. And then there would probably be technical leads or experts assigned to develop, I think you described it as kind of a roadmap for each of those subgroups, and to pull in other stakeholders, which could be academic organizations, could be, again, I think it's really up to those experts to really decide what the composition of the groups are to really advance the knowledge, the innovation, and the shared learning. So I don't think there are really any sort of predetermined boundaries or structure to this. It would really be up to sort of the representative participating countries as part of the steering committee to shape that, to make it most practical and most useful. So, Lucy, you want to get the unmute there? You're still muted.
Sorry, so if we can wait for Lucy, can I start one question?
Yeah, please, Dr.
Hey.
Kitamura, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Noriko from Japan Institute for Health Security. My question is a little bit similar to the Singapore one. I know that we had a meeting about influenza forecasting recently between US CDC and Japan Institute for Health Security. Is it a kind of, this steering committee is also aligned with that kind of communication? Like, I think in the document you mentioned the dengue fever forecasting or MR forecasting, and then that's probably one good direction, but probably influenza is, or COVID-19, maybe not more interested in anymore, but is probably a good start for Japanese context. So is it kind of part of this steering committee? I just wondered.
Yeah, no, it's a great question because we actually had the same thought after the call. The truth is it was originally coincidence. But after we spoke to you at GEAS, and also we had a similar conversation with KDCA around influenza surveillance and forecasting and nowcasting. I think, that was coincidental in the sense that there was really a lot of not concern, but interest in sort of what this flu season was looking like with the new subclade, and wanting to sort of understand the surveillance data as real time as possible so that public health officials could make decisions and provide guidance to the public and the community around the flu season. But I think what we realized after having that flu call is that could be, I mean, it's almost a great example for the type of thing that we're talking about in this community of practice, right? To take it from sort of an abstract forecasting and analytics, data for decision making sort of conversation to really exactly what data for exactly what decisions are we talking about? And it's a real live scenario and a case and an interest. So again, it originally was coincidence that there was a conversation around influenza forecasting at the same time we were sort of organizing this call on this community of practice. But it's, as you said, I think it's something that if there was interest, we could certainly use that as a case study around sort of the applications of some nowcasting and forecasting.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Lucy. Not yet, okay. Let's see. Any other thoughts?
Just one more question that I would like to ask. It would be helpful to understand the indicative timeline for establishing the steering committee and or the working groups, including when nominations or institutions are expected. So could you advise on that?
Yeah, great question. I think that's also part of what we're hoping to get an understanding of from everybody about how much time we feel like it'll need. I think in the proposal, we have the first 6 months of the formation of it to be the identification of people who are willing and able to be stakeholders from each country that's interested. Having those stakeholders kind of define what those subgroups and working groups may be, coming up with the initial policies and procedures that would govern that group, and then convening those stakeholders into that first annual meeting as a way to finalize the creation of the group, and then almost use that annual meeting as a kickoff to the execution of the subgroups, the inviting of more participants in, things like that. So I imagine it'll be a 3 to 6 month kind of effort to stand up, with the goal of that annual meeting acting as a kickoff for the beginning of the community of practice and operations.
And Dr. Isani, I think maybe a question to the group is, I think the first question is just, is your institution country interested in participating and staying involved in this community of practice? And so I think, we sort of look to you all if it's reasonable to sort of, I know everyone needs to go back and discuss this internally and consider the proposal, and perhaps if there's additional questions, you can send them to us, but I guess maybe within a few weeks, if folks could get back to us just simply with an expression of interest or not, and then who the focal point or who the point of contact would be, if that's reasonable. And then I think, again, it's not to say people couldn't join later, but we'd like to at least move forward with those that clearly do have an interest and want to sort of engage, and others, if they need more time, can certainly get back to us later if they're uncertain. So
And
think
then
on
I
that,
was,
but go ahead, Todd.
yeah, great summary. I was going to step in and without the accent, state what Lucy had put in the chat. So Lucy says, we're still working through IT issues resulting from transition to the standalone Australian CDC. So I'm not able to unmute. Sorry about that. I was able to observe that I see the value in this group as arising from its leadership and governance through official government agencies. I see that this will position it to actively consider the parameters of policy settings, et cetera, and support more practical application of data science for impacts. This, I think, was a key theme across much of the discussion in Seoul and sets it apart from other GitHub communities that are academic-led. Thank you, Lucy.
Lucy, thank you too for that comment. I think it dovetails, again, we don't have any, we're open to discussion on sort of the composition of a steering committee or the governance, but this initial meeting was government representatives. That was the composition of the meeting in Seoul. And I think what those of you on the call today, with the exception of our colleagues from IONFI, are all government representatives. And so we really, in thinking about that top layer of the community of practice structure, which would be a steering committee, if there is a focal point from government that would align with what you're saying, Lucy, and I think make a lot of sense. And then as the subgroups get defined and populated with technical experts and interested parties, it may be, and again, that's a question that those subgroup leads will have to decide, that there's interest and need in engaging academic institutions or others, right? There may even be a role for private sector in some specific subgroups or something, but that would not be part of the steering committee. But again, I think we're open to comments or different suggestions on that. Great. Great, thank you, Alyssa. Great, well, I guess maybe for those of you, open to other comments or questions, but maybe just to get a thumbs up or a sort of, if you think it won't work, we'd love to get feedback within a couple weeks after you've had a chance to discuss internally within your organizations around this, whether there's a desire to an interest in participation. And if so, if you could also then let us know who the focal point would be. And one of the things that we're really keen to make sure is that we're engaging the right people who can either connect to other technical experts or policy leads or permission that we're as I think Lucy highlighted as well. We want to make sure that we are reaching into the right focal points as we move forward. So if you can let us know expressions of interest, and then if there is interest, who the focal point would be, so that we can make sure we have our distribution lists set up appropriately. Perfect. Thanks, Lucy.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I'm Jino Kong, the Deputy Director in KDCA of South Korea. So thank you for sharing the proposal, and I already read sharing GitHub and studying the committee members of each country. But we have already connected with the CDC of US and Microsoft team. So on maybe it's on December last year, I think so. But we will sharing nowcast and forecast of influenza through the developed forecasting model of the University of Georgia. So, but and we have no authority to decide it now because participating the committee or sharing information about it, because we have no authority about it now. So I will ask my director and the response later, and then the sharing the information about the with Michelle. Okay, thank you so much.
Great, thank you. We'll just look forward to hearing back after you've had a chance to talk.
And then one more pitch. I think we'll be sending out what our 3 requests are. The GitHub administrator, we're hoping to have this asset, that need met by someone within the community of practice. So Josh, do you want to give a pitch for that?
Yeah, it's definitely something that we're hoping to set up. If people, again, like Michelle said, are interested, this seems like something people find would be valuable. I think part of the original or the initial 6 months will be the setting that up. But I think that as part of kind of a learning exercise as well, that we're hoping that the GitHub administration itself becomes self-managed within the community. And then people who are interested in learning more about, security, data sharing, policies associated with that would be willing or interested in kind of taking over the administration of that. So again, under the theme that the community would be completely self-governing, and people within the community would support it as needed.
Alyssa, is that a legacy hand, or do you want to come in?
Thanks, Michelle. Just a quick question. In hearing some of the other countries ask, so I'm Elisa Finlay, I'm the US CDC Global Health Security Program Director in the Philippines, and unfortunately my colleagues who attended the training were not able to call in today, but I'm in very close touch with them, and they have the documents that were presented. And I was wondering, for the steering committee, it seems like there may be 2 levels. There's kind of like the decision maker level, and then there's also kind of the folks who are more with the day-to-day technology and detailed understanding of what the potential is. And wondering, for the steering committee, what are the folks that you look at decision-making role, having a strong technical understanding is also important.
You broke up a little bit there. I think I got most of it, but if there's a follow-up needed, please let me know. I think that's exactly right. I think that the steering committee itself would be the leadership of the community of practice who would determine the strategic direction of the community, what areas to pursue, which ones their country or their communities were most interested in. And then the subcommittees would be more specific to an individual technical practice where someone might be a specialist or a SME or have interest in that. But I think the way that you defined it is exactly what we were thinking or exactly what we were proposing, as at least as a starting point. With the steering committee setting the strategy and the direction of the community as a whole, and then each of the subgroups kind of focusing on that specific area of interest or topic where they might want to bring in, like Michelle said, experts or things of that nature.
Any other questions?
Hello. This is Yuren Liu from Taiwan CDC. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for inviting us. So after the Seoul workshop, we have already have bilateral meetings with KDCA Korea and also with Singapore to discuss about the possibility of bilateral modeling hub, and also to discuss with Singapore about our strategies for the domestic and also the international surveillance. So I think we are really love to be participate in this data community. And just one quick question is that since we are going to have a lot of discussions on the steering committee and also the development of the different working groups, is there a plan that we can set up any kind of social media communication channels instead of the mailing list, because it was allowed us to have a more rapid communications with different member states instead of using the mailing list.
Yeah, that's one concept that I had originally added to the proposal, was using something like Slack, if you're familiar with it. It's another thing that open source communities do very, very well. And I do think that because we're all government representatives, our ability to communicate through, our government tools make it challenging. I do think that is a fantastic idea and one that I hope that we could do. I think I removed it because I wanted to make sure everyone was comfortable with it and that we got approval to communicate through those channels through each of our organizations and countries. It was just maybe to best summarize, it's just not there because I don't know what the communication policies were for everyone to be able to open that up as an opportunity. But if it's possible, I do agree it would be tremendous and improving our ability to ask each other questions, share documents in a way that's much closer to what, again, open source communities are able to do. So I love that idea. I think it's something we should definitely pursue as an early question to ask ourselves if that's possible.
Any final comments, questions? I don't want to cut anyone off. If people think of questions after this call, after you go back and you talk with your colleagues or you're having internal conversations and there's questions that come up around the community of practice, the governance, anything, please feel free to reach out to us and let us, and just by email, or we're happy to get on the phone or anything. I recognize, we all recognize that this will require some internal conversations back in your home sort of organizations. So please do that. And then thank you again. Ion Fee was going to take notes. I know that Julian from the ECDC was interested in any sort of follow-up. He couldn't join because of the time difference. But thank you for the notes. And I think the last thing I was going to say is, yes, we look forward to, again, I think within the next couple of weeks, if people are able to get back to us with expressions of interest and points of contact, we'd really appreciate it. We look forward to keeping the momentum of moving this forward. And we'll pause there, I guess. Any other last thoughts from Todd, Josh, Sue?
All good from my end. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, just thanks again to everyone for the time. I really appreciate it.
Great. Well, have a good evening in Atlanta and a good day to everyone in Asia and the Pacific. All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.